it wasn't until when I would tell some people along the way, and sometimes I would tell people and they would freak out, right? Because no one really likes to hear these types of thoughts. People don't really know what to do with them. So they're like, don't think that thought. And then you're like, okay, yeah, cool. I like shouldn't say that thought out loud. So I'll just like suppress that further,
Hello. Welcome back. Hi, Vibin fans and newbies alike. We love you all so much. And we have a very special guest today. But before we introduce her, we're trying to get back into the habit of introducing ourselves for people who are new to the show or even people who have been listening for a long time, because we talk about ourselves on this show. So I'm Kelsey Aida. I'm a best-selling author like our guest today. Very exciting to have another author on. And I help people to own their power, win at life, love themselves radically, manifest their dream life through the process, all that jazz. And we have Miss Lindsay Robinson, my beautiful co-host here, who is a hypnotherapist extraordinaire. Say hello to the peeps.
I was wondering when you were going to pause. Hypnotherapist extraordinaire. Thank you so much. I help people rewire their minds, retrain themselves to believe what their desires want them to reflect. They get a choice. And so I help them decide what they want to believe that will help them manifest their dreams, goals, desires, and own their inner wisdom and power. And I don't have a voice today, so I sound like a frog. Hi, guys. I really don't. It's gone.
She's tired. It's mom life. Everyone's getting sick in her house. I mean, it happens to the best of us.
Things happening over here.
Yes. And then our lovely guest, Janelle. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to introduce you. She is a confidence coach, a best-selling author, a speaker, and she helps you to see yourself as the valuable badass that you are in your career and overall life. So please, round of applause. Woo! Welcome, Janelle.
Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you, Lindsay, for having me. I'm so pumped to be here. I love that we're both best-selling authors. Writing a book is no easy thing, like it's a feat. So Congratulations to you. That's amazing.
Yeah. And you too. And it's funny because I was just checking some of my book stats, which I hardly ever do because I always get
same.
So
I know. I always
of myself. But I was checking yesterday and I was like, oh my gosh, Letters to the Universe is like 190,000 on Amazon, which like sounds horrible, right? To like a normal person, like, oh my God, it's not even in the top 100,000. But when you do the math, there's 33 million books on Amazon.
Yeah.
So to be even in the top 200,000 of books, that means you're in the 0.5%. So so more than the top 1% of books. I really did the math. 0.5%. And I saw your book too is up there, girl. So we in the top 1%. High five.
Wow. Wait, I haven't checked mine. What's mine?
Yours was, I think, even higher. I was just on it. Do I still have it up here? I think your book was ranking like 80,000. Like it was in the top 100,000. I think.
Dang, girls.
Wow.
Like I had the point percent.
We'll see.
Killing
oh my gosh. I'm getting.
I know.
Yeah, a little hot over here.
How's that for a Monday?
Here.
Yes. So you're welcome for my mathematical skills. I did not do this calculation by hand. I use Google. But anyway, fun fact for anyone listening, there's a lot of books on Amazon. So even if you see one in the top whatever 100,000, it's like amazing. So pretty cool.
Wow, I feel good. I'm going to go take that fun fact with me.
Yes. Do you feel confident now? I got the confidence coach feeling confident.
Yep. I love teaching confidence. So like everyone who's listening, I'm all about confidence. Everyone knows me as like the confidence queen on TikTok. I do all things confidence. So you can go follow me there. Janelle Lynnae. I feel like that's where like my best, like I'm kind of to be humble, but not humble. Like I'm kind of blowing up on TikTok right now. So that's where I feel like it's like my platform. And it's so funny because for so long, not for so long, but since 2020, I had so many people be like, get on TikTok. And I was so resistant. And I was like, ugh, TikTok is so dumb. It's a dancing platform, like everyone's objections. And I have this cousin who is in college. So I'm 30 and she's like, I don't know, maybe 20 or something. She's like a little cousin to me. And in my mind, she's stuck at like 12, and she's like, I think your brand would do so well on TikTok. And I'm like, oh, that's so cute of you. Thank you so much. But like, no, my brand won't do well on TikTok. That's for like dancing people and weirdos. And then slowly but surely I friggin' joined. And now I'm like, oh, should have listened to my cousin 2 years ago when she first started really telling me, but you you can't change the past, but what you can do is you can change right here and right now. And you're never too late. Like, I don't care what platform it is. I don't care if it's TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, like you can create a brand for yourself. You can create a name for yourself. You can go out there and inspire people, empower people, and share bits and pieces of your brain, because your brain is unique and it's not like anyone else's brain. And so you do have something to share no matter who you are. And it's never too late to get started. So if anyone's listening, like this is your sign to get started, because it's not too late on any of the platforms.
Yes.
Whoa.
Snaps.
This reminds me of a nice quote that I heard when I was getting started with my business. And it was, the best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is now. And I'm like, ooh, that's good. I kind of never forgot about that. So that's kind of, I like that quote a lot. And I love that you are encouraging people, you know, it's never too late. And I would even say, perhaps you got on in just the right timing, because what if you got on 2 years ago and then you didn't see as much growth as you're seeing now, and you're like, well, this is dumb. So you get off TikTok and you like throw it in the bin.
There you
But
go.
now it's like perfect. Everything has aligned for you, which is great.
Love that. Great mindset shift, Lindsay. Thanks for
Oh, gee,
sharing
thanks.
that.
We're all about the
Good.
shifts on High Vibin' here.
Yeah, we are.
So Janelle, tell us, well, I'm going to let Lindsay ask her favorite question, and then I'm just going to plant this question into your head for the cue for the next question of the how piece, because like everyone's like, okay, I want to feel more confident, but how? So we'll get there in a second. But first I want to hand the mic off to Lindsay, because I know
I'm
what you want to ask.
I'm
I'm
going to
gonna
use
let you
my
ask it.
raspy voice and ask you, what kind of led you to here? So tell us about your journey, tell us about your story, and kind of those things that really impacted you to be the confidence coach that you are today. I want to hear it all.
Yeah. Well, like many people who do what they do today, it's because of pain from the past that I am able to do what I do today. And so for me, like going all the way back, when I was about 13 or 14 years old was when I really started to deal with negative self-talk, negative self-worth, and really just beating myself up a lot. Like I would, every room I went into, I would be like, oh, you don't really belong here. Or, and what's so interesting about our egos is it's like, when you're insecure, you kind of oscillate between really, really, really confident, actually cocky, and then you go to really, really, really low. So you're kind of going really high, really low, really high, really low. So like in some moments, I'm like, I'm so much better than everyone else here. Like I'm like the hottest person in this room. Like I'm so amazing. And then the next minute I'm like, oh, I'm a piece of crap. I don't even want to be on this planet anymore. You know, how can I not be here? And so that was kind of like what my story was having like, thinking I'm really awesome, hating myself, thinking I'm really awesome, hating myself. And so, you know, what comparison is like when you're always looking to other people to validate or not validate yourself. So if you think about it, like even today, like an example with a client that I had recently, she would go into fitness classes and she's a pretty fit person. But if her fitness instructor was like super, super, super fit, then she'd be like, oh gosh, like my body sucks, you know? But then she would look around the room and see like all these other people in the class or whatever, that their body wasn't as good as hers. And they'd be like, okay, cool. Like my body's actually really amazing. Right. So she is continually looking to external sources to validate or not validate if she likes her body or not, instead of figuring out if she likes it for herself. So I feel like that's what I was always constantly doing, was I was looking to everyone else to either validate myself or to not validate myself. And so, yeah, when I was 13, we lived in upstate New York. And the other backstory is that I was homeschooled for a while, and then I went to public school, and then I was homeschooled again, and then back to public school. So I definitely I think that started some of those thought patterns of like, I would go hang out with homeschool kids and I'd be like, oh my gosh, these nerds are like so weird. Like I don't belong with all the homeschoolers. They're freaking awkward. And like, they don't even know how to have a conversation. And then I go to public school and like, everyone seemed like so posh and cool and put together and had awesome outfits and had like older siblings, and they watched like TV shows that I wasn't allowed to watch. And so they had like cooler outfits and they just seemed like they knew more than I did. So then I'd be like, oh, I'm not really like the cool girls here. And so I kind of like everywhere I went, I looked for ways to confirm that I wasn't like everyone else there. We went to church growing up, and I still go to church. I'm a Christian, and I would go to church and be like, oh, well, all the girls here are such like goodies, and like, they're all so perfect. And I've kind of always been like a pretty like big personality person. Like I've always just been like, I'm like very proud of who I am. And back in the day, I would have considered myself a lot, like thinking that my personality was so big that like it's too much to handle. And people like everyone, all the other girls are like nice and like sweet and like feminine. And then there's me, and I have like 3 brothers, and I'm like just this like ball of like, and I'm like, I'm more like masculine, or I don't know, I just had like all these things, right? Just like constantly beating myself up for all these different things. So we moved from New York to Colorado, and I didn't want to go with my family. I told them I wasn't going to move with them and that I was going to live with my best friend. And I was 13, and they were like, haha, that's really cute. Get in the car. We're moving to Colorado. And so I moved to Colorado against my will. And my 8th grade year, I would introduce myself to everyone in Colorado. I'd say, I'm Janelle from New York. I'm Janelle from New York. I'm Janelle from New York. Like I wanted everyone to know that I was from New York and not from Colorado, because I thought Colorado was like for cow people only, and that New York was like where the best people lived and all this stuff. And so I think it was really around that time, like having that transition and teenage hormones and just a lot of different things like that accumulated. I think that just all brought it to the head. And that's when I really started to think about disappearing. And that's when I really started to think like, well, what if I just like wasn't here anymore? Like if I went missing, then maybe everyone would notice me or remember me. And I would kind of think about like Tom Sawyer and how he like faked his own funeral, and then he watched everyone like really sad about him. Like I would kind of start to have those types of visualizations where I would visualize myself. Like at first it was just like disappearing, and then people would be like missing me, and I would picture like the popular girls at school being like, Janelle is so awesome, we really miss her, and the whole school talking about me because I disappeared. And then like my parents being like, oh, like we just wish we weren't so strict with Janelle, like we should have let her, watch those PG-13 movies. But like I was just like wanted everyone to basically like pay, like for what they were doing to me. And I can look back now with so much empathy for that young 13, 14, 15-year-old girl. At the same time, I know that like I didn't have the tools, but I know now like I had a victim mindset. Like it was like the ultimate of a victim mindset, because I was really like felt like I didn't have power, that I was powerless, and that like I focused on everything that was wrong instead of everything that was right. Because the truth is that my parents loved me very much. I had like my parents married, great, like pretty good marriage at that, at that time, and their marriage has actually gotten much, much better because my mom went and became a therapist. And so their marriage has actually like grown exponentially. But like, and not to say that your childhood isn't great with or without parents together or whatever, but if you're like, I hear people who are like, they had divorce or they had, emotional or physical, toxic things happening to them. Right. I didn't have any of that kind of stuff, So it's like, but I was creating this reality of like, I'm not loved. I was creating the reality of I don't belong. I'm not enough. I'm too much. And because I was creating that as my reality, it was manifesting more and more and more, as we all know, right? Your beliefs lead to your thoughts lead to your actions lead to your results. And so, really to like, I guess, land the plane of the story is that, around, I think it was about 14 or 15. It's hard for me to know exactly when this all happened because it was so subconscious, but that's when I started to believe that like, I started to think about taking my own life. And because I was thinking about taking my own life, I was thinking about, okay, well, how would I take my life if I were to take it? And then I started to think, okay, I don't want to actually take my life. What if there was like a natural way I could die? And that way no one could be mad at me when I die. And it was like this way of escaping from this world and wanting to be somewhere else. And so I would picture myself dying in a car accident, and I would picture my funeral after the car accident. I would picture everyone crying and everyone missing me. And it was a way for me to feel loved by picturing that the car accident was the way that I would actually get loved. And it was so morbid and twisted on so many levels, because like I would picture like all these people coming to my funeral, but like their life being like almost like my funeral being like a Tony Robbins seminar or something, where like people would come to know Jesus because of my funeral. Like it's just so many levels of twisted that like my funeral would be the way that I would change lives, like as if my actual life couldn't do that, like it was like my death had to do that. That was some Joan of Arc, like being a martyr or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of like, I believed that in my subconscious mind, from about the age of 14, 15, all the way to 22. So it was about 8 years that I believed I was going to die in a car accident. I believed it was going to happen sometime in my mid 20s. And, it wasn't until when I would tell some people along the way, and sometimes I would tell people and they would freak out, right? Because no one really likes to hear these types of thoughts. People don't really know what to do with them. So they're like, don't think that thought. And then you're like, okay, yeah, cool. I like shouldn't say that thought out loud. So I'll just like suppress that further, And then sometimes like the worst part is some people would confirm it. Like I remember, I think I was like drinking in college and told one of my friends, and she was like, oh my gosh, we had a friend growing up that used to think that. And then he did die young. And kind of like going back to like our thoughts creating our reality is that I've shared this now on so many podcasts and speaking engagements. And like, there's been times, like I was one time actually on a podcast similar to this, where there was numerous like hosts and co-hosts. There's 3 women total and me. So there's 4 of us. One of them started crying because her dad actually believed he was going to die young, and he did. So she was like losing it on the podcast. Then the other one of the other gals, and these are personal development podcasts, the other one had the belief that she was going to die young in a car accident or of cancer. And she had been believing that and had never told anyone in her entire life. Again, she's literally
Janelle.
What? Lindsay.
Nobody knows this, but I don't think you're as weird as you think you are, because from the age of 10 to 21, I was convinced that I was going to die at 21. So much so that, oh God, thank God I didn't. I would pray to God every night, please don't let me die. Please don't let me die. It's heartbreaking, especially as a kid. But like, I found myself as a teenager and like almost waiting around. Did you find that you were just like, well, I'm gonna be out soon anyway, so I'm just gonna phone it in until then?
Yes.
And it's so, girl, sisters. Okay. First of all, but I obviously don't think that anymore, but for a long time, it was like always in the back of my mind, like playing. And I don't know really why. I mean, I do a little bit, but I think most of it had to do with the fact that it seemed like it was the thing that was going to happen. It just seemed like that's what was going to happen. I can't explain it. It was just like, well, that's what's going to happen. It just seems right. It seems normal. It seems fine. Like that is how my life's going to play out. And
did you have fear like getting close to your 21st birthday?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of distracted. That might have been a driving force for me moving to California. I was 20 years old and I was very distracted on my 21st birthday. I was in a new city and all those things, maybe that was a way for me to kind of deflect a little bit. But yeah, I was a little bit nervous, but then it passed and I was like, okay, maybe it's 22 then. And I kind of did that for a few months after I turned 21. And then I was like, okay, well, whatever. I'm fine. So many times. And little things would happen, like 6 months into moving to LA, actually, towards my 21st birthday, I was convinced that I was going to die soon. There were so many signs, heavy quotes, so many signs telling me like, oh, you're going to die. And I called my mom and I was all crying and I couldn't explain it. I was having probably a breakdown at 20, 21 years old. And nobody could figure out what was wrong, what was going on with me. And then it just left. And I think for me, that was me kind of letting it go and just being actually processing what was happening, because I didn't know. And without really knowing, I think that might be what happened, is I just kind of gave it permission to process through my body. I felt it. It was horrible. And then I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to. I guess that's not going to happen. But there's still that underlying fear of like, well, when is something going to go wrong? I don't know if you have that too, of like maybe in the back of your, like, when's the shoe going to drop? It can't be this good kind of thing. It doesn't happen all the time, but I think that's the leftovers that I have. But no, I don't think that you're as different as you think, because if this has happened to you on other podcasts too, and it's happening right now. I don't even think I told Kelsey that. Did I tell you this, Kels? Have you ever? No, I don't really talk about. I think I told one therapist like a long time ago, but I don't tell people like you were like telling people. Yeah, I did not tell anyone. Because
and I think for me is because it was such a stronghold in my life, and it really did block me from having results because I kept waiting around until that day. And so I was like a hamster running on a wheel, and I kept being like, well, what's like, I had a long-term boyfriend and I literally got to a point, like we were together for 6 years, and I would be like, well, I don't really want to break up with him because that would be really hard. And like, we love each other, but I don't think he's my person. But like, he'll find out when I die.
Oh no.
How we break up. Like literally, I would use it as like a
Wow.
for any decisions in my, like big decisions in my life. But to your point, I didn't talk to it. It's not like I was a big journaler all these years. I never, ever touched it. I never talked about it a single time in my journal. I went to therapy. I didn't talk about it in therapy. Like it was so subconscious. And I think so filled with shame and weirdness because it was something that I never heard anyone else talk about. And again, like I've shared on TikTok, I share on Instagram. I get DMs from some of the craziest people that you would never guess based on their brand they're building on social media and stuff, that they're wrestling with these thoughts. And again, it's very subconscious. So I don't think that it's like, it doesn't always debilitate everyone, maybe to the extent that it debilitated me. And there were times where it didn't. That's the thing, is I was like the happiest person on the outside, looked like I had it all together, so charismatic. Like no one knew this was happening. And that's why I love talking about it so openly, because it's like, well, someone listening probably has a similar thought pattern. And if we don't talk about it, then she's probably never going to break free from it. And then even if you don't have that same thought pattern, which obviously I hope that no one does. I don't wish these thoughts on anyone. But we all do have crazy thoughts. We all have weird thoughts. We all have debilitating thoughts that are holding us captive. And I think the shamier ones and the ones that are the least talked about are the ones we most need to face head on, because if we don't, then we're never going to have full healing. And for a lot of people, they're going to get stuck on that hamster wheel, making excuses, and they won't understand that that's the root of their self-sabotage. Like your limiting beliefs are the root of your self-sabotage. And if your limiting belief is like, my life doesn't really matter that much, like that's a manifestation of, like, mine was like the worser version of that thought, right? Like I deserve to die basically, but other people just have a lighter version, which is like, well, it doesn't really matter what I do that much. Right. And think about how that manifests in your life. If that's your thought pattern all the time.
Real quick, after this episode, I posted a reel right before we started recording, and I want you to go look at the reel and read the caption right after we record it. I swear I'm psychic, because I said exactly everything that we're talking about, to the extent of like, feel your feelings. What message is it sending to the universe? I swear, what message is it sending to the universe if you can't sit and honor your own emotional state and know that you're worth doing that?
Yeah.
What do you think that's saying about what you're trying to create in your life? So it's so funny that.
So cool. Okay, I can't wait to check it out.
Perfect timing. See?
Perfect timing. I love that.
Well, and Janelle, I think the part that most people can relate to, maybe it's not the whole death aspect of it, but it's just feeling not valuable, right? If we're just going to make it broader, where everyone has felt this at some point or another, probably, who's listening to this, like, it's normal to feel like you're not valued, like you're not valuable, like you don't matter, like how you were saying, like what you're doing doesn't matter, like what difference is it going to make? We're all going to die anyway. There is literally a song on the top charts going around right now. And it was playing in the salon the other day when I was doing hair. And I was like, what a terrible song. And it was like, the message was supposed to be good, of like, oh, who cares? We're all going to die anyway. But the words were like, oh my God, I have to find this song and post it in the Patreon.
There's a lot of music like that.
It was like blowing my mind.
So it was kind of like, be free to be who you are, because in the end we're all gonna die.
That was the intention. Like, oh, I don't care because I'm just gonna die anyway. And I was like, I care. Like, I think the words were like, who cares? We're all gonna die anyway. And in my head, I was like, I fucking care, because I'm not dead yet. Like, I'm here. We're all here. And I just think, well, I understand it because I've been suicidal, but at the same time, like, now in this new space where I am, it makes me so sad to think that people are still stuck in that space. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because it's like, just because you're here temporarily, which is a fact of life, doesn't mean it doesn't matter. And I hate too when people in the spiritual field are like, oh, it's all a hologram, nothing's really real, so by that logic, like, it doesn't actually matter. And it's like, okay, you're still a human having a human experience that is very real, right? So whether or not, if it's a game or a hologram, like, it fucking matters.
Like, what do you think we're here for? Do you think we're here because it doesn't matter? Like, that's sad.
Do you think you traveled through time and space to like inhabit this body in this 3D world full of other people doing the same thing for no reason?
That's just so sad and depressing.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
I'm glad we're talking about that.
Yeah, if you have that outlook, then it's like, where's your purpose lie? Where does your identity lie if you are feeling like you're just a hologram and none of it's real, And
Mhm.
for me, like the way that I was able to break free from that lie was I had some mentors that were through my church, actually, they're my Bible study leaders. And I had, again, never was sharing this with anyone, but it just came out one night and I told them. And what was so cool is that the husband, Kevin, he had actually believed a similar thought about the car accident. And he was like, do you think you're going to, do you picture your funeral? Do you picture all the nice things you'll say? Do you picture being packed? Do you picture all these like things? And I'm like, yes, 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 yes. And I had never felt like so seen and so like known. And then I remember him saying, your creator doesn't make mistakes. You're here for a reason. And, we think about how the odds of us being born, right? Like there's some number, and I should probably have it memorized, and I've seen it so many places, but it's like 1 in a billion chances of like our cell, like the sperm and the egg coming together and this child being born, And so it's like, how can we go through life believing that there's no purpose or that there was no creator that created us with purpose? And so for me, that was the night that changed everything. And like, they prayed a deliverance prayer over me, which for me was like so powerful. And I talk about that in my book. Like, I know a lot of people probably don't believe what I believe. That's totally fine. Luckily, we have like free speech. We can all talk about what we believe in, For me, it was like that deliverance prayer, like broke chains off of me and broke things off of me that that were like a spiritual attack that it literally, like, it's hard to even describe because it was so night and day. Like I literally left that evening and Lindsay, you kind of touched on this. Like, I don't know if you struggle with like kind of like those types of thoughts of like worst case scenarios, but honestly, I don't. Like, I feel like I had such full deliverance from those thought patterns that like I really feel freedom. Like I feel true freedom from those thoughts. And like, every so often, like for a split moment, I'll hear the thought, like, it'll be easier if you're dead. And I just know that's darkness. I'm like, nope, cancel. Nope, that's not from my creator. I'm created for life. I'm created for purpose. I'm making an impact in this world.
I love that you say cancel, because before we hit record, I said something about me looking like a bridge troll today in a nice way. I love myself and I'm awesome. So when I say it's like, I'm very jokey like that. And she's like, cancel. We don't want to say that. And I actually say that all the time. Every time, like if I'm talking about negative self-talk or if I'm teaching about like how to rewire those thoughts of just negativity that are so insidious that you don't even know they're happening. I'm talking about that. And I have to give an example and I can't even like pretend to say the things that I hear people say about themselves. Like I'm so whatever. But if I do force myself to say it, I immediately have to say cancel, cancel, cancel. I have to say it 3 times and I have to shout it to the universe because I'm not allowing it in. It's purely as an example to give you an idea of how to do this. But it hurts me to even pretend. And, side note, that's what I hope for everybody. I want it to hurt so you don't do it anymore, because you're not supposed to feel pain when talking about yourself. It's not supposed to be painful. It's supposed to feel good. Okay.
And your words have so much power, like
So
we
much
don't
power.
realize how powerful our words are. But I think that even like the jokes of like, oh, I want to kill you, or like, oh, I wish I was dead, or kill me now. Like even those little jokes, like I know they're jokes, but it's like, I just think that we have such power in our tongues, and we gotta be really intentional about how we're speaking over ourselves and speaking over the people in our life, speaking over children, speaking over marriages, speaking over, whatever you're saying about other or family members or coworkers, colleagues, whatever. Like our tongues are so powerful and we can either use them for life or for death, And so it's like, I want to speak life into things and speak life into people around me. I don't want to be bringing them down with like things that I'm saying,
It's actually true. You are the most suggestible to your own voice. That is just a scientific fact. So if you ever wonder how powerful your own thoughts and voice are to yourself, it is the most powerful thing in the universe. So be nice to yourself. Be nice to yourself.
Let's
And
go.
speaking of science, to go back to the number that you were alluding to before, the magical number of the chances of you being you, I mean, we can safely assume that it's at least 1 in 8 billion people, right?
Yeah.
If there's 8 billion, it's probably more crazy odd numbers than that. But it's safe to assume that if there's only one of everybody, and we're all here on this planet, it's at least 1 in 8 billion, probably smaller chances of you being you.
And
so you probably cannot count that high to that number.
And to get
So
really
just let it
geeky,
blow your mind.
Yeah, let it blow your mind. And to get really geeky, close listeners of our podcast will know that I'm super into ancestry and genealogy. And I haven't even had to go that far back in my family tree to see how many times an ancestor could or should have probably died. Okay.
Wow.
So the fact that you're able to listen to this,
true.
Everyone had to be in the exact right place at the exact right time in order for you to even sit here. So,
and that's just one factor. I mean, think of all the other
Yes.
factors that we can't even fathom or speculate that had to happen and line up perfectly.
This could be a whole episode.
In order for you to be you and you to exist. Like clearly God, the universe, life force wanted
divine.
you on a soul level, like clearly everything wanted you to exist.
Right.
So why don't you want yourself to exist? I mean, I understand because I've been suicidal and it's like you feel so miserable and you just assume that it's going to last forever. And like nobody wants to feel like that forever. So then you think the only way out is out because I don't know a way to feel better. So it's either like feel better or get out. So I definitely understand and have a lot of compassion, but I think we're just here to give you the tough love of like, how can you not see that like
Inviting you
so
to
many
see.
things had to happen for you to be here and to exist and to take up space and to have a right in doing that.
Inviting you to see the unignorable fact that you are a magnificent child of the universe. So go be badass, okay?
Go do
Stop
it.
wasting time.
So to give people more confidence, because we can like preach all day, but like if
Right.
they don't believe it, it's not going to sink into the nervous system, right? So what were some of the steps after the deliverance that you took either consciously or subconsciously to start building your confidence? Like what were some of the practices or the shifts or the mindset tweaking that took you from I'm not valuable to I'm here for a reason. I do have value to add to the world. I am worthy of being here. Like tell us a little bit more about what that was like.
Yeah. Well, I guess like just thinking about valuable tools that I've utilized that like, cause I feel like when people listen, I think it feels good to be like, I'm valuable, I'm a badass. And they can like listen to the three of us saying that.
Yeah.
And there might be like a momentary pump up or motivation that happens. But then as soon as the podcast is done and you're like back into your regular life, a lot of times it can be really easy to just get back into your previous thought patterns. And so, the first thing I always encourage people to do is to sit with those limiting beliefs first and foremost and really uncover as many as possible. And so I have a free workbook that we can, give the link below. But the free workbook actually walks you through how to think about these limiting beliefs. And again, that's what my entire book is about. Each chapter of my book is a different limiting belief and like where the childhood trauma came from, and then how that formed in my brain, and then how to overcome it. But sitting with it and facing it and putting it pen to paper, because a lot of times what's happening is that our thoughts are floating around in our mind and we're not taking them captive. We're not tangibly touching them. We're kind of just like letting them float. And therefore it's hard to even describe it. You're just like, they're floating, but if you put them on paper and you look at them, they lose its power. It loses its power in a way that's hard to even put into words. So go get the workbook, work through your limiting beliefs, start to pay attention to what are the thought patterns that you're having throughout your day that are self-limiting. Or even one thing that's great is that you can get the workbook, get started on it, and maybe sitting in a vacuum, you might not notice it, even though I give a bunch of different examples in it. But then as you go out throughout your day for the next few days, start to think like, what are the things that I'm saying over myself that I wouldn't say to a friend or that I wouldn't say to my child, and start to capture those and then write them down. Okay. So write down the limiting belief, and then you're finding the truth. This is an interesting part because sometimes truths can be the exact opposite, and it's just about creating a new neural pathway. So if you've been telling yourself that you're stupid or that you're not that smart or you're not smart enough yet, which a lot of my clients wrestle with those ones, the truth really is that you're smart and everyone is born smart. We all have different strengths and talents. And so for that one, it's just literally starting to repeat that as your affirmation. And it's a placebo pill for your brain. When you start to do affirmations, you're placeboing yourself into believing it, and you're creating a new neural pathway that didn't exist prior. But sometimes your limiting belief cannot just be the immediate, like the exact opposite, because there might be some truth to your limiting belief. So, for example, I was speaking for, I believe this is when I was speaking for like Pinterest or Cisco or something like that. I speak for a lot of tech companies. A woman said, okay, so on my team, I have only 2 years experience and everyone else on my team has 12 years of experience. So my limiting belief is that I don't have as much experience as my other colleagues. And she goes, but that's the truth, because I literally only have 2 years experience. They literally have, 12 plus. So I'm 10 years behind them. So I'm like, okay, yeah. That's true. It's true. But the limiting belief is that, that you're not as valuable as your other colleagues because of your lack of experience, or your limiting belief is that maybe you don't deserve a raise like them or whatever. Like we got into what is the true limiting belief around that. And then again, the truth can't just be, I have 12 years experience. Because you're like, no, I literally have 2 years. But what you can do there is you can leverage your strengths. So in that scenario, you would say, while I don't have as many years experience as my colleagues in this area, what I do bring to the table is, and then listing off some of your strengths. That's why I love the test strength finders, because it helps you actually be able to say your strengths. So like for me, I'm an activator. So like the strength I bring to the table is activation. I get stuff done. Communication. I'm a really solid communicator. Futuristic. I'm great at looking at the future and navigating. I'm strategic. That's one of my other strengths from Strength Finder. So for this example, what I would encourage a listener to do when you're working through your limiting beliefs and your truths, start to look for your strengths, whether that be the personality tests like Strength Finders, very, very helpful. Or maybe you just revisit positive feedback from a boss, revisit positive feedback that a spouse has given you, a friend has given you, like maybe you're a great listener, maybe you're a great communicator. What are the things that make you really special? And start to tie that into your truth and leverage that instead of trying to leverage the amount of years that you worked at your position as the thing that makes you awesome. And then you would, again, just like the first example, you would repeat that over and over and over again so that becomes your new thought pattern. You're rewiring your thoughts so that you're seeing those strengths. And so anytime you're at work and you're having that moment where you're thinking, oh my gosh, I sounded so dumb. It's obviously because I don't have as much experience as everyone on my team and I'm not as smart as all of them, or they just know so much more. Then in that moment, you're like, cancel, back to the cancel thing, cancel. And then you're like, I'm an amazing communicator. I'm an asset to this team. My activator and my strategic adds this and this and this to my team. And just have that in your back pocket as a tool where you're constantly pulling it out. Because I believe in doing affirmations, which means I'm all about standing in front of the mirror. Like we talked about, out loud, it needs to be out loud, looking into your eyes while you're saying your affirmations over yourself, and doing that every single day to create the new thought pattern. Then when you're in work and you're hearing that other thought happen, because it's going to happen just in a split second, just boom, right? You're going to have this moment in a meeting or a moment where you just feel that feeling or think that thought. But because you've done that so many times, you're able to really, it like comes to your mind really quickly. You catch that thought mid thought, and then you're like, wait. This is what I've been doing my affirmations for. It's like I've been practicing my whole life for this moment. And then you're able to speak your new truth over you. So that really is one of my, that takes a daily transformation, it takes some focus, right? It doesn't happen just accidentally. And that's why my book is called Flex Your Confidence Muscle, because confidence is a muscle. And so it takes time, just like you wouldn't be able to build a muscle overnight at the gym. I don't believe that you just change your thought patterns instantly. Like it takes some intentionality. And if you actually want to change your thought patterns, if you actually want to start showing up with confidence, if you actually want to change your negative self-talk, if you want more peace in your life, if you want more confidence in your life, then you actually need to take the time to again, journal through the limiting beliefs that are there, find the truths. And if you need help with this, like you can DM me on Instagram, you can reach out to me. I guess, Instagram's probably the best way. Like TikTok messages no one really does that. So just DM me on Instagram and be like, hey, not yet. Yeah. I think they have messaging because I think I've done it before, but it's just, no one really does it. I don't know.
It's not very active. No.
Yeah. Which is fine. Like I respond to all my comments in TikTok too, but you can just reach out to me however is best, TikTok or Instagram, and just explain like, hey, I found this limiting belief. I think what's blocking me, but I'm having a really hard time figuring out how to leverage the truth because it feels like your limiting belief probably feels like the truth, It probably does feel like the truth right now, but we're all here to help you figure out that new thought pattern that you need to start repeating, because you don't want to repeat something that you're not like super pumped on repeating, you're like, is that weak language? Is that powerful language? You want to repeat something that's really powerful every single day.
Sorry, go ahead, Kels. Go ahead. You just need a flag.
I was gonna Raise your hand to speak. I was gonna say, and the repetition part is so key because what you're doing is making that statement and that truth familiar, right? Because the
Yeah.
limiting belief is so familiar that it
Yeah.
feels true, right? Familiarity is always gonna have like a higher importance in your mind and feel more true and more relevant. But just because it's more familiar, it doesn't mean it's actually more true, right?
No.
Beliefs are not truths. So that's where you can get choosy, choose a new belief, right? A new affirmation, and then you repeat it until it becomes so familiar that,
Mhm.
yes, when you go into that moment of triggered, you have it right in your back pocket, like you said. And I think it's really important that you pointed out that it's a practice, it's something you repeat, it's a routine, it's not going to happen overnight. So I love the muscle analogy because it's so
Yeah.
perfect for that.
I explain it this way. So if you imagine yourself in like some sort of meadow, this is what I do. Some sort of meadow with tall grass, and you see this like well-beaten path that leads to a forest of darkness. But it's so well beat, like you have walked it so many times that your instinct is to automatically go down it again. But then to the left or wherever you're looking, you see like a sunrise and birds are singing and there's butterflies and there's a rainbow, there's freaking fairies flying around, whatever, but there's no path. It's your job to make the path. Here's the thing that I want to say about the process. Yes, it's a process. Yes, it's a practice. But we do hard shit every day for the idea of a payoff. Why can't you do this that feels actually good, right? It feels good when you're doing it. The
Mhm.
only trouble is it's so unfamiliar that it's like we're resistant to it because it's like, oh, is it really going to work? Is it going to pay? Yeah, it's going to work. It's going to pay off. It's going to be better than you ever imagined. You just have to walk where the butterflies are. I know I'm saying really weird stuff, but whatever. You just have to keep walking it. That's how new neural pathways are created. One of my instructors explained it like when two neurons kiss, that's a neural pathway. And what we're doing is creating new kissy moments for your neurons, for your brain pathways, and you have to walk that path. So if you like that visualization, a lot of people do. I like that visualization of like, this is an old, dusty, dirty, stale path. It smells, there's garbage and old banana peels there. I don't want that anymore. But the whole thing that we're doing, Kelsey, Janelle, and I, as coaches and as facilitators, is helping you take that moment where it is now a fork in the road instead of an automatic going down the stinky path. We are creating the fork in the road, helping you to create that so that you can take that moment and pause and decide a better feeling thought. Because yes, it will pay off. And yes, it will be good.
Hey there. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far, but if you want to listen to the whole thing, we're going to invite you over to our podcast. Either search for High Vibin' It on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you guys listen to podcasts, or even better, if you want to watch the extended video version of this episode that's even longer than the actual podcast itself, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/highvibe. Lindsay, tell them what's awesome about the Patreon.
Patreon is where we have all of our extended episodes. As Kelsey said, we have it on video so you can actually see the things that we're talking about. Sometimes we have visual aids, and it's nice to know what we're talking about. We also have hangouts that we do sometimes that are exclusive to Patreon people. And you can get started with all of this and bonus content and everything that we have only for the Patreon people for as little as $3. I think it's $3.33 a month. And that's it. And you guys can get all the benefits and all access to everything that we put in there. Really cool.
It's really cool, really fun, super easy to join. And you guys don't even have to do that to finish this episode. If you're like, screw it, I don't want to pay any money, I just want to hear the rest of this episode, go to our podcast, High Vibin' It, search for it wherever you listen. It's totally free. Either way, enjoy the rest of the show wherever you choose to enjoy it. And we will see you guys next week because we do a new one every week. Adios.
Bye.